a little bit confused, Mom. I don't quite know. What does Ping Xiao stand for? Like, what is it? Like, I know it's my middle name.
When we got your adoption papers in China, your name was Ping Xiao. So when we got to the orphanage, I asked someone at the orphanage, I said, tell me about the name Ping Xiao. And she said that Ping meant small because you were very tiny, and you were very tiny.
I'm still very tiny.
And Xiao was just a very common last name. Very general last name in China, and that was given to you by the folks in the orphanage. We didn't want to just take that away from you as far as your identity went. And so we were like, okay, we'll keep this as a part of your name to honor, you know, what we know about you from China.
For a while, I think my parents brought me to these Chinese events in this Chinese restaurant that is now closed down.
Growing up, I've always kind of wanted to find a way to learn about Indian culture. I actually didn't try Indian food until I was 21 years old at a restaurant in Johnson City, Tennessee. So that was my first experience with it.
Early on, there were a lot of families in this area, probably about 10, who had young girls adopted from China. So early on we had a group, and we did a lot of cultural things together, the celebrations, eating together. There was a class to teach the young girls Chinese.
I did try to take Chinese when I was younger, but another friend of mine who's also adopted from China, it was not a very good fit for either of us, and I didn't really learn, well, I didn't learn anything, let's put it that way.
It was a little chaotic and a little frustrating, so that didn't continue.
But the course, I think, was a bit too hard for someone of my age. I don't recall how old I was when I tried to take this course, but I think it was below 10.
And as she got older, she became less and less interested. She's become more interested in the Japanese culture.
I think culture is partly where you grow up, where your family is, and like your morals and beliefs, but it's also your history, like going back and like where you came from. So I think it's a little bit of both. I haven't really been able to learn that much about my African American culture myself, but in school I always am really interested when we learn about African American history and their history, like in Africa itself and in the United States, and I enjoy learning about culture and stuff like that in school, so that's always a good thing for me.
So here is my current cosplay that I'm working on. Her name is Judy Arisugawa from Revolutionary Girl Utena. And then this, of course, is a really rough draft of what her uniform's gonna look like. She's gonna have, these are looking really rough right now, but they're gonna eventually become shoulder things. The chain, it's gonna loop around here. And then, of course, sort of like that. So that'll be fun. See, I only started making, like, actually making my own cosplays, not like buying them, about a year ago. So I'm still pretty new to, like, I'm extremely new to the world of sewing and all that stuff. I'm like sort of proud of this one. It looks like a mess on the hanger and it kind of looks like a mess on me, but I promise it looks like okay. So I spent a while on this because you couldn't buy any parts for this online, so I had to make it completely from scratch, which was honestly a new experience for me. I'm just starting to only now get into making everything from scratch, instead of buying like parts and then modifying them. I think one of the main things I've struggled with growing up where I am is probably the fact that there isn't a lot of diversity here, but also there hasn't really been a lot of diversity in the media and the shows I watched. I guess because I've never been quite connected with my Chinese roots. When I started getting more curious about just anything Asian, I did start to branch out towards Japan, which I guess sounds a bit weird, and considering that I am not Japanese, and so naturally that shouldn't be what I'm focusing on. So that in 5th grade was sort of my bridge into sort of more Asian cartoons. And there still really isn't a lot of Asian representation in media, which is something that upsets me, and it's something that, since, you know, I can't find representation here, I would like for there to be a place in pop culture. So I have found a bit more comfort in sort of, I mean, I guess we could say anime, but even then, really, A, everything's taking place in Japan, and B, if it's fantasy stuff, then it's not really Asian.
Just recently, I was able to play with black violin. It's these 2 African American guys with their violins, and what they do is they take classical music and like turn it into something with a good beat, something contemporary that like kids and teenagers can enjoy more. They didn't want to have to play violin, but their parents made them, and so then they turned it into something that they loved, and I love that idea. And I got to play with them because they go around to schools and stuff. The teachers chose like a little orchestra that like would play on stage with them, and I was part of that, and it was a really great experience to be there with all those other kids and on stage and have people watching you. So yeah, that was a little culture thing.
I'm a very uncultured brown person. So when I go around other Indian people, you know, it's like they know this. I don't know anything. I have the most country accent ever. I was basically raised white. My friends joke around with me. They're like, "You're not Indian, you're white." Like they joke around with me like that. I mean, it's kind of how it feels sometimes, you know. I mean, I have no knowledge of Indian culture. Like, I've got a lot of Indian pride, but I have no knowledge of why I have it. I guess it's just the fact, like, oh, I see other Indian people, I want to be like them. So the most I've experienced is I love Indian food. I love curry, and that's it.
I think I felt a little alienated from other Asian people. I did have one Asian friend growing. I had 2. I guess when I was around them, I never paid attention to the fact that they were Asian, but after I got older, I think I always unconsciously gravitated towards stuff that wasn't necessarily Asian once I got older. So I stopped wanting to be involved in, I guess, the culture, and I started wanting, I guess, to assimilate a bit more to what I was seeing around me. And even now, I don't really have any Asian friends. There are a few Asian people at the high school that I go to, but I've never really been able to relate to them. Like, I remember my dad, I think maybe when I was in 5th grade, would say something like, "Oh, I met this Asian person, you guys should talk." And I remember always being like, I don't want to talk to them because they're Asian. And I always had this immediate reaction to sort of like, just because we're Asian doesn't mean that we're gonna get along. And of course that's the truth. And I think because of that, it sort of pushed me away from anything remotely related to Chinese culture. I certainly think there was a period of time where I completely wanted to ignore that other Asian people existed, if that doesn't sound too terrible. I don't have any friends who are Chinese American and in touch with their more Chinese part of themselves, so I'm not often faced with the more Asian part of myself because it's just not around me. I don't see it ever.
I was actually one of 2 Indian kids at my high school. We were acquaintances. I mean, I wouldn't say we really stayed away from each other. We would kind of associate sometimes. We weren't like super close friends or anything like that. His dad, was Indian. So, I mean, it's not like he was super ingrained in the culture or anything like that, but it was just different friend groups, basically.
Recently, I guess this year, I've been a bit more interested in pursuing Asian American culture, which I don't get much of a chance to since we kind of live in a racial desert. And I feel like almost taking a course on Asian culture, which there is one actually I've been considering taking. I feel like it would be a bit weird for me since I feel like I should already know this stuff, but I don't. It's not uncommon for me to be the only Asian person, and really the only person of color in the classroom. It really wasn't that much of a deal until I moved to the high school, and I started realizing that there were really not a lot of people who looked like me. I remember when I went to San Francisco, in 5th grade, there were a lot of Asian people in San Francisco, and I remember sort of being a mix between uncomfortable and wanting to gravitate towards them. There's this part, I feel like, as an Asian American, if I'm surrounded by a place that is predominantly Asian, obviously no one knows I'm Asian American, but I feel like that there's that part of me that would almost be scorned because I'm not actually Asian.
I would love to visit India. That's actually one of my dreams, is to visit India. I actually could have been a chaperone for my college's trip to India they took in January, but I was too busy with classes and I couldn't go. But that's actually the #1 thing I want to do, is I want to visit India.
I've always had the fear that if I go to China that people will want to speak Chinese to me and I will not know what to do or say. I've always felt a bit inferior around other Chinese people if we're specifically talking about an area where it's expected for me to know something about my culture just because I look pretty Asian.
I'm really interested in my African American culture, and I'd like to learn more about Africa in general. My mom actually, well, my adopted mom actually went on a mission trip to Liberia, and I thought that was really cool, and she got to like have a crazy culture experience, and I might want to do something like that one day.
The idea of even learning the language or just approaching the topic recently has been a bit of a daunting idea to me. I feel like it would be different if I was a different race wanting to learn Chinese, because there's not really a pressure, but I feel like if I start, there's a bit of a pressure for me to, I guess, be good at it. Mandarin is really hard to learn, and you know, a lot of it is tonal, and that, you know, it doesn't have an alphabet, which that scared me away from the language, which in part sort of alienated me from the country. And I would like to get more in touch with, I guess you could call them my roots. There's a bit of a fear that I'll either be rejected or I won't be good enough, or maybe I just won't want to learn, which is one of the reasons I've been avoiding it. I don't want to breach into the topic and then find out I'm not actually interested in it. It's almost better to have the option, and like, rather than to sort of know. But I don't know if I would ever really find ease over across the ocean. I'm very Americanized. I don't know if the culture would be something I would adjust to easily, or if I would have to adjust to it in a way that I wouldn't necessarily like.
I think MAYLIN views the Chinese culture with many different lenses, one of which is a lens of perhaps a culture that is biased towards women in a negative way. And I'm not sure she wants to come into relationship with that or knows how to come into relationship with that. I hope one day she can find the beauty of that culture. I hope that she can resolve this piece in a way that has meaning for her. And that's really one of my biggest hopes, that she can come to terms with it.
I've considered the idea of visiting China, but I don't know if that should or would ever become a reality for me. I don't know if I would want my parents to go with me back to China. I think it would probably depend on how old I was. I think it would also probably depend on whether or not I was specifically going to look at orphanages, and if I was going to delve into that, or if I was simply going for a tourist visit. I guess it depends on the kind of trip I would want.
I have 6 tattoos that I started getting when I was 19 years old. The first one is right here. It is the Irish Trinity. So the Irish Trinity is a tribute to my biological family, because growing up I always thought that I was Irish. And that was the only part of my biological family that I wanted to keep, was the actual genetic heritage. So I got that kind of as a tribute. My second tattoo I got was, and it's my adoption date. That one is my favorite because it means the most to me. It means not only that I get to live with my amazing dads and awesome siblings, It also is a constant reminder that I never have to go back to the family that I used to live with. I'm not obligated to have contact. It's a constant reminder of on that day that I am permanently and finally safe. The third tattoo I got was right after my high school graduation, and I have it on my back. It is a crescent moon because I was born on a crescent moon, and it has 4 stars around it. There are 3 at the very bottom, and then there's a big one at the top. The first 3 are the first families that I've lived with: my biological family, my first foster family, and then my adoptive family. And then I have a big one up top that is going to be my family for whenever I find someone who wants to marry me and have children. The fourth one that I got is right here on my clavicle. It is 5 triangles with 1 colored in. It is for my siblings and I in our adoption order. I am the second of 5, so that one's really cute. The 5th one is of our dog Buddy, who passed away 2 years ago. He was the best dog in the world, and I had a hard time when he passed away, so I got him tattooed on me so that he is always by my side. And the last tattoo that I recently got, it says "to the moon and back," which is a phrase that my biological mother said to me. She said, "I would love you to the moon and back." And it's got a sun, a moon, and a star. I have the moon filled in black because I have the moon tattoo on my back, and I have two of my closest friends have the same set of tattoos, but they have different phrases. Like one of my friends has the phrase, "You are my sunshine," and the other is "when you wish upon a star." So, and they have the corresponding sun and star colored in. The tattoos are really important to me because they're like images of stories. Like if I'm at the beach and I have my shirt off and I have all these tattoos people see, someone will come up to me and be like, "Oh, just wanted to know, what does your date mean? What does that symbol on your arm? What do the triangles mean?" And it's important to me because they tell stories of people's lives, and people have such intricate, detailed lives, and these small little patches of ink on your skin tell parts of that story.